Hi, loves. I am so excited to be back with another episode for you of Thriving Together. I loved this episode so much. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in just a moment. But I wanted to give you a couple of updates. When you're going to be listening to this, I think it's going to be in June and definitely in the summer. And I wanted you to know about a few great things that we've added over the last several weeks in the Chronicon community because there's so much magic that happens in that community. I feel like sometimes I struggle to share about it because it's honestly so special that sometimes words just don't do it justice. You kind of have to come in and try it out and see for yourself. Meet the people that are in there. Start your new relationships with some of the most amazing people from around the world. And people have made such incredible friends. Like literally, there are folks who fly to the in-person Chronicon together because they love each other so much. And we have friends that have met in the community that show up at the hospital when you have to go, stay at the hospital for some reason. Like there are people that are really, really, really there for each other. And it's all happened through the Chronicon community. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to quantify that and put that into words, but I do try. And I am excited to have some of you join us because we have a free trial too. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So you can sign up, join us, check out an event, check out the different content that we have. And you don't necessarily have to commit if it's like not what you thought, or you're curious and you just want to see if it would be right for you. You can do that for free. And you can have I think it's a 2-week trial that we have. And if you sign up for annual, there's even like a greater discount and stuff. So I hope you check it out. A couple of things that we have done is we actually have Amy Bonaducci Gardner, who is my amazing nervous system coach. She comes into the community every single month, and we have worked with Amy to have her do that. And it is an investment that I will be so glad to make every single month so that we can support more and more members. And that's all included in your membership. So you actually get a nervous system session with Amy every single month in the Chronicon community. And the other thing we've added is a lot of people, when I announced my Own Your Magnetism program and I share that there's a one-on-one coaching opportunity, a lot of people wanted to know about a group coaching opportunity. And so we worked through some of the events that we have, and now we have a monthly group coaching opportunity, and it's with me. So I get to coach you on whatever you're going through. You can come and get your questions answered, get support on things. And I have been a coach since I was 23 years old. It's something that I have always kind of had in my back pocket that I bring to everything that I do. And I love supporting folks and especially supporting our members. I have a special place in my heart for our members. So I hope you come join us, check it out. As I said, we have that trial that you can join and not have to worry about trying it out, and if it's not the right fit for you or something, you can always try it for free. And then we have these amazing opportunities and offers, and we also, on top of all of this, have a community connecting event. You get to come and meet new people, and we also have a guest speaker every month. So it's really just so fun. Those are also just our events. We have content constantly and throughout the day. And then we also have our member-led events, which are so awesome. Our collective leaders are just incredible human beings leading amazing conversations in the community. So those are just a few updates. And I wanted to, jump into the episode now because it was such a special episode. I absolutely loved it. I got to interview one of my best friends, Sarah Jenks, and I can't believe how long I've been podcasting, but this is the first time I've gotten, our schedules have aligned for her to be on the show. And I just love Sarah. We talk a lot about how we met like many, many years ago and where we both were and the different lessons that we've learned in our time of knowing each other and just like what we've been working on and how we connected and all that kind of stuff. And Sarah is an ordained priestess. And I have to be honest, this is something I didn't know anything about until Sarah first started talking about it. And coming from a very different spiritual and religious background, I always felt like it was something I was trying to understand, but didn't know a lot about. And so Sarah has really educated me on what it means to be an ordained priestess. She talks about her path to that and also how it's really supported her in her journey in a multitude of ways. And I just love this conversation. I also have been trying to sort of share a little bit more about myself and my own journey. I'm not so much doing like the solo episodes anymore, but when I have conversations with people, I've been trying to insert some of my own thoughts and, things that are happening for me in my life and not just focus on the guest, which has been honestly really great. I feel like it's led to a really beautiful conversation. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope that you can curl up, listen to it, or listen to it while you're, running errands, whatever it might be. But one of the things that actually really warms my heart so much is we do have, I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, but we do have a YouTube channel where all of our episodes live. And we have a Thriving Together playlist on there. And if you enjoy this episode at all, if you want to leave a comment, if you want to share it, all of that really matters. And even leaving a review on Apple or Spotify, no matter where you're listening to this, your support, your sharing it on social media, if it resonates with you, all of that just like makes such a difference. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And here is my conversation with Sarah Jenks. Hello, everyone. I am here. If you're watching on YouTube, you already see Sarah Jenks, my guest today. We are both so excited to be here with you. Sarah, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. It's so funny when you're like in TV host Nitika mode. It's the best.
Oh my God. Well, Sarah has been my bestie since I was like 28. I feel like we need to talk about our friendship a lot on this episode because I do think people love that, to like know how people became friends.
Yeah.
I feel like on the surface, we do not necessarily look like two people that would make sense. If you just looked at our Instagram content, I feel like it's so wildly different. At the core of who we are, like people don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Do you agree with that, or do you feel like no, I'm full of
No,
shit?
I totally do. I mean, this is what's so great about deep friendship is when we met, we were actually in a similar place. It was like 2009. We were both at the beginning of our careers and completely lost and looking for deep friendship and really thinking about what did it mean for us to, be a leader and have opinions on things and talk about spirituality on the internet, which both things in 2009 were pretty new. And we just had time to sit at cafes all day and like wax poetic about the universe. And that's like really what we did, it was like, I wasn't married yet. And then, it's been 16 years. Like our friendship would have a driver's license. And we've gone on two very different paths in our life. But it's like at the core, we're just like love each other so much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And at the core, I know like we have the same values, which I think I wouldn't even be able to necessarily quantify that or like label that, I guess you could say. Years ago, I think that's something I've been much more aware of lately, of like, oh, things don't always look maybe in this exact way I thought they would, but when you get down to it, those values are there. So,
it's so like, I just have a thing that's coming through right now, which is I'd say the core value, and I think the reason why our friendship has really stood the test of time is that we're both really committed to being the truest version of who we are. And so it's just like continually peeling back the layers of the onion to reveal more and more and more truth. And of course, that's going to look different for everybody on the outside, but that path is very unique and very important. And I just love that about you, how devoted you are to that process.
Oh, thank you. I love that about you too. And as you were saying that, I just like flashed in my head, like your 700 children. I know the number goes up every time I say that. She has 3 children, y'all, but I might as well be 700. And like your beautiful, handsome husband, and just like you live on a farm. And literally the first time I went, I was like, there's like dirt and grass and like there's a lake. Like, what is in the lake?
You were so nervous.
I was so nervous. And I was like, I'm a concrete girl, y'all. I live in New York. I said this recently. I was like, I weirdly like concrete. Like, people think it's so weird, but I'm like, I've lived in New York for 23 years. Concrete is all I know. Like, it just feels like home. Just
You're
could
like,
not make a difference.
I don't do grass. I was just like,
You
okay,
know, it's true.
I'll come
It's
see
so
you.
true. I know, but I did come visit, and I love coming to visit, and now I can't wait. You're working on your home right now, and I can't wait to come see it when it's all done. So yeah, I'm glad that we like kind of went down memory lane a little bit, because I feel like that's such an important piece of our story. And like, yeah, and I have also just really loved seeing you blossom and seeing the woman that I met. I almost want to say it was like a young woman, not a girl, obviously, because we were like well in our
I
20s.
was 24. I mean, I wasn't even 25 when we met.
Wow.
I might have even
Okay.
been 23. Like I was like a teenager.
Yeah, basically like
I
one
was
foot
basically a
outside.
teenager. No
Oh my
offense
God.
to the 22-year-olds that are listening.
Yeah. We love you.
Yeah.
We love you. But it's real different up here.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, and I think the thing that I'll always remember is like you coming to my apartment when I was having like one of my hangouts with people, and you had like pearls on. And I was just like, she has her whole life together. Like, she has pearls. I'm living in this like grody studio on top of a bar on Bleecker Street, and Sarah's wearing pearls. Like, I don't understand what is going on. But for you, it was like it was actually a very different thing. That you were wearing pearls was actually, now I know, a sign that things weren't going so well. Weren't going well. So like, can you tell us a little bit about like what was going on for you when we met? Like what was that version of Sarah like? Because if people see you now, oh my God, they're gonna see like this wild and free and untamed version, which I know you love. But yeah, what was she like? Like, I obviously know my version, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, well, when we met, I had either just quit my job in advertising or I was about to. And, I grew up in a traditional town outside of Boston and grew up going to church, and I was like super normal and followed the traditional path of success. I was like graduated top 10% of my class, went to the #1 liberal arts school, got an amazing advertising job out of college. I thought I wanted to be an event planner for a while, so it was like I was on the straight and narrow. And I remember sitting in a cafe with my husband, Jonathan. We were just, boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. And he was in medical school. And I just had this moment of creative clarity where I had been working in advertising, I think for only 6 months. And I just realized I cannot have a boss. Like, my body didn't program that someone could tell me what to do. I know it's funny to hear, but I mean, and you know me.
I do.
But, I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs. And so I really saw, my parents really taught me that the best way to be safe is to be in control of your own destiny, not to get a paycheck. And so I think that I needed to bust out of that more traditional have a job situation before a lot of people did. So I was sitting in this cafe with Jonathan, and I was asking myself, like, what is the thing that would be really cool to do? And I was at the peak of my emotional eating. And so what was happening was I was going into my advertising job, and my client was Dove chocolate. And I was eating almost an entire bag of Dove chocolate promises in the closet in secret every day in my advertising job. And I would be almost done with the bag and think, because I would sort of black out, it was like classic binge eating, and think to myself, why am I doing this? I have the most amazing boyfriend. I have a cute apartment in New York. I got an amazing job. I've checked all the boxes. I went to a great school. It's like, what's happening? And the outside of my life looked great, but the inside of my life, I was completely miserable because it wasn't actually mine. It wasn't the life that I was meant to have. So I'm in this cafe and I was like, I just wish that you could like go to therapy about eating. Because I could tell that it wasn't just about learning about nutrition. I knew everything about nutrition. And so I started searching for therapy and eating therapy. And I was going to psychology program info sessions. And then I found the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is where I met our friend Kavita. And I learned all about emotional eating. And I became an emotional eating coach. But the transition for me of going from having a good job in advertising to becoming an emotional eating coach and putting my pain and my inner world and what was real and true for me about my journey in emotional eating at the time on the internet was like running 1,000 marathons in a month in terms of where I thought my life would be and where I was actually going. And so I was just protecting myself with pearls and white button-up shirts as much as I could.
Or
sort of like
a white button-up shirt and red lipstick.
And red lipstick, and which I still wear. And to sort of like soften the blow. So I would find, I still do it. You know, we all do it.
Yeah.
I would find all these like little things to hold on to that were like my old identity or the old roles that I would play to sort of soften the fall of what inevitably happens when we like blow up the life we thought we were going to have forever.
Wow, I'm really taking that in. And also like just reflecting on, I mean, you share that so beautifully and reflecting on like, oh, where do I do that? What was my version of that? You know, because I know we all have that. I think, I mean, you know this because you know my inner details, my inner workings, that I don't always share this part of me as much online, but with my,
You're welcome,
now,
everybody.
we can edit things. Okay, we won't edit this part, but no. But what I was just thinking about was my version was like, I would always give my power away to people, you know, like relationships. And I had just gotten divorced a couple of years before we met. But I feel like I'm still learning that lesson, like, and it's deepening and it's getting so much better. But yeah, I would just always feel so small and so insignificant. And I feel like my body and my health then just like perpetuated that feeling of smallness. Like, oh, I think I'm broken. And then my body is showing me that like, actually you really are broken. And so then I would, every time I met someone, I felt like, I mean, I've just learned recently, like I definitely looked at people like they're going to save me, or like, I am like this poor sick girl. Like, are you going to be the one to save me? Like, are you going to be the one? And I had no idea that I was doing that. I mean, that particular thing I actually just learned like very recently. But yeah, I think when you and I met, I definitely was still, you know, for years, I was still in that pattern of like feeling that smallness and giving that power away to people. Like maybe you gave the power away to food, you know, at the same time.
Well, and people. The thing is if we do it one place, we do it everywhere. And this is why ceremony and my relationship with the divine has been so important. And the particular path I'm on is really about identifying our wounds and our shadows. And I have that same one of I feel so unlovable inside that I'm always looking for other people to fill that void and to prove to me that I'm lovable. But the only way to actually heal that is to love those parts of us ourselves. And it sounds so basic when you say it on a podcast, but the truth is that I know you can relate to this. It's the deepest spiritual work we'll ever do. And when we hit it, when we really can find that part of ourselves that feels so unlovable and bring so much unconditional love to that part, the feeling is complete bliss.
Yeah, it makes me think about like this morning before you and I started talking, I was listening to Eckhart Tolle and like
Mm,
listening to a lot of his practices and teachings because I was feeling anxious about like waiting for a text from someone.
mm,
And I was like, oh, I feel so small right now. And I'm making it about this person. I'm like convinced that, oh, because so and so didn't text me at the time I thought they would or whatever,
mm,
that I am like insignificant or unlovable.
mm,
And yeah, so much of what Eckhart talks about is what you just said of
mm,
like going into that deeper practice and understanding that that is the ego. It actually has nothing to do with us and like learning to love ourselves through that. Then you can be grateful for these moments that are uncomfortable. And I feel like I've gotten to that place more and more. But yeah, it's definitely a practice. And what I'm hearing in what you're talking about too, which is something I wanted to talk to you about, is just like this way that these different I guess you could say the way you explore all of this becomes like very sacred.
mm,
And I know that you use that word a lot in your work, and you have something called your Sacred Start,
mm,
and which is free for people to download, which is so great. And so I guess I wanted to understand, first of all, like what does the word sacred mean to
mm.
you?
Oh, that's such a great question. Okay, so for me, what happened for me was that I found myself in the last place I would ever think I would end up, which was in a sacred feminine ceremony. And when I came into ceremony for the first time, what I realized was that before I went into ceremony, I actually only had access to 10% of my senses and the experience of this lifetime. And when I went into ceremony, and this isn't a plant medicine ceremony, we don't do plant medicine in my lineage. And we dropped into certain technologies that allowed me to access the other 90% of what's happening right here on this planet, in our bodies, in nature, around us, in the cosmos. And for me, that unseen language, that's what the sacred is. It's like anything we can't actually see, anything that we can't understand with our rational mind. And for me, it's about feeling my place in the timeline of the many, many lifetimes I know I've had on this planet, feeling my place within humanity, feeling the connections I have with other people, and really trusting that I'm being guided and trusting that that I'm in this great mystery school of life. And I'm just really here on a journey to experience what it means to be a soul, to learn certain lessons in this lifetime, and have to fulfill my responsibility that I know I came to this planet to fulfill. So it just adds like this layer of sanctity and depth and meaning in my life that I think I was really looking for in food, in relationships, in experiences, or in money, or in material things. And it doesn't mean that I don't still love all that stuff, but I'm not looking for God in those places anymore.
Mm, yeah, I can really relate to that. I feel like you and I have both been on like such a journey of sacredness, but
Mhm.
in again, just like very different ways in our own unique ways. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, we sort of touched on this about like where you were when we first met, but I know you've also been really vocal that there have been many times in your life where you haven't felt like you're on the sacred path or that things don't feel as sacred, I should
Yeah.
say. What are some other times that you felt like that? And then what were the steps that you took to kind of walk yourself towards feeling and being more sacred?
Oh, deep question, babe.
Girl, I mean,
Let me think. Okay, so here's the thing. I think for a long time, I thought that there was going to be like my life before and then my life after. There was going to be like one moment when I was like that was then and this is now. I did it. I made the big transition and now everything's going to feel sacred, amazing. And I'm not going to have any more growth to do now and forever. Amen. But the truth is that for me, I'll say, the deeper I get into the work of the sacred feminine and being in integrity with my lineage, the harder the lessons are and the bigger they become. And it's sort of like the difference between going to high school and getting your PhD. It's like I'm more equipped to learn the lessons and succeed, but the lessons get sort of more and more intense. So that's been my experience. And I'd say that, okay, this is the one I'm going to talk about. So I'm building this house and I had a moment where this was about 6 months ago, where I was really attached to finishing the house. And I was really stressed out about it because we hadn't made all the money yet and we really wanted to finish it. And we had sort of bitten off more than we can chew and it got a lot out of control. But I was really in this place of I'm gonna die unless I finish this house. And we were in this rental and the rental was, just like such bad energy. And I was slowly dying and I was losing my intuition. And I'm a professional priestess. So like I need my intuition, else I can't do my job. And Jonathan and I were sitting in ceremony one night and I just got this hit that we had to go back to the land. And I have this temple that I'm in right now. And it's one big room and one bedroom. And I just knew that we had to move everybody back in here. We put the 3 kids in the bedroom. Jonathan and I would put a mattress on the floor. And we just had to go. And as soon as we got back here, we went on vacation and then we literally just got off the plane and drove right to the temple. I couldn't even go back to the rental. I realized what home actually meant for me. And it wasn't about the house. It was about my connection to the land and my connection to the trees and the water and the spirits here, and realized how deep of a relationship that I had cultivated with this land. And my family didn't need a big house to be in. We just needed to be with each other and learn how to be on top of each other and learn how to be with each other's really big emotions. Because you've met my kids, it's like they're not quiet, and I had to walk all the way into the fire. And after a couple months, people would ask us like, oh my God, how are you doing in the Moon Lodge? That's what we call the temple. And I just said, it's like, honestly, and we're still here. We're doing so great. We're just really doing so great. And, the kids fight with each other a lot and none of us have any personal space. And I don't have a bedroom door, but I felt the most at home I've ever felt. And I don't need my big dream home to do that. We're still building it because it's fun. It'll be like great to have some space, but we don't need it. And so I think that, and the steps that helped me get there were, I really had to surrender it. So for me, it's about going into ceremony and sitting with the Great Mother, which is the first archetype of the 13 Moon Mystery School, which is my lineage. And she's all about, I surrender, I receive. And so I gave up the path, gave up my attachment of this house, and I gave it over to her. And I said, I surrender this. I am in total trust. I am here on the journey because I know the house isn't about the house. It's about the journey it's taking me on in order for me to evolve as a soul. And for me, that meant, really learning, being in the mystery school of my relationship with this land and feeling deeply committed to being here, because I was also like questioning our town and if this was really the right town for us and all that stuff. But regardless of that, this is for sure my home. And that's been such an incredible process. So surrender and ceremony, close your eyes, get quiet, empty out. deeply listen, and then just like immediately follow the steps. I always say, like, don't wait on it. If you get a hit, just go and see what happens, because you can always course correct. But if we don't act on those sacred nudges, our outside society and culture and internalized patriarchy will take over, and we won't learn how to follow our inner guidance. And I think that's a really important part of the process. And then to have, once you've made the move, have multiple check-ins with yourself around what's working. What did you do? What was the path you take? And really congratulate yourself for doing something that most people wouldn't do, for making a decision that most people wouldn't make, for following your intuition, even when a lot of people around you think you're crazy, because those lessons that you're learning for yourself are so incredibly valuable. And it's way more efficient than just like doing what everyone else thinks you're supposed to do.
Oh my gosh. Yes to that, especially that last part. And what's coming up for me as I hear everything that you're saying is, I've been doing a lot of work around the nervous system for the last couple of years. And it's interesting because I used to think that like a healthy parasympathetic nervous system was someone who, or a system that was like on the same path, like maybe more linear, for some reason, you just feel like it's like sturdy and straightforward and, consistent. Yeah, consistent. Exactly. And apparently a healthy or more parasympathetic nervous system is one that is actually incredibly adaptable. So that's coming up for me as you say that, the ability to not be rigid and say, okay, something feels off here. I thought this was my dream. I thought this was my dream apartment. I thought this was my dream scenario. I thought whatever. And then being able to say, I'll actually be okay if I change this, if I decide that it's not, and I need to make a left instead of a right, all of those things. So I think that's really beautiful, and I'm sure modeling that for your 700 children is probably really amazing. I'm obsessed with your children. You know that.
Love you.
Well, one of the things that you've also mentioned throughout our, conversation, and obviously in the work that you do, you mentioned this a lot, is the conversation around roles and like the role that you play. So you obviously are a mother, you're a wife, you're many other things, but I know that you talk to the women in your community and who follow your work about roles and the patriarchy specifically a lot because of so many things. So can you just, before I go into my spiel, can you just tell us like why are roles and understanding the roles we play so important?
Yeah. So this really came front and center for me when I had my first child. And I remember there was this one night where I was like trying to get dinner on the table before Jonathan got home, and I wanted to have Marshall asleep so Jonathan could have a nice dinner. And I was like running around trying to get the apartment clean. And then Jonathan just texted like, oh, I'm going to be an hour late, because like my surgery went over. And I just like lost it. And I had done enough inner work at the time where I looked at myself and I said, why am I so mad? Why am I so mad that like he has to go save a life right now? It was like an alien took over my body and turned me into this like 1950s housewife. And I had this moment of truth where I said to myself, how is it that this highly educated feminist has unconsciously turned into this quintessential housewife? First of all, also it's important to understand that I was the primary parent and the primary breadwinner at the time. So it was, and like John and I didn't have agreements over like me getting dinner on the table. Everyone can do what they want. If it's in your joy, like do it. I now love to cook. But at the time, I had a new baby and I was working all day and I didn't really need to be creating like a perfect movie scene. It's like my house, like it looks like a set. I mean, you remember, it's like
I remember.
Every time someone would come in, it was just like perfect. And it was because there are these rules baked into the roles that we play as women. And we've been indoctrinated into the rules of the roles since the moment we were born. And once we step into, because even what was so wild is that I would look at mothers and say, I'm never going to do that. That's not how I'm going to be. But it's like, as soon as my biology changed and I had a baby, it was like, it took over me, because human psychology and human behavior is actually pretty predictable. And the oppressive patriarchy understands how to manipulate people through what we learn, through what we don't learn, through what we see, through what we don't see, and has made the majority of women into these very controllable, malleable beings. So around the same time, I was starting my journey in sacred feminine ceremony with my mentor, Elaine Kalila Dowdy. I was also, you had been in the personal development industry for years, learning all about emotional eating, learning about belief system work, and yet this was still happening for me. So as I'm in ceremony, I start getting really curious about, why aren't more people in ceremony? And was ceremony happening on the planet very much? Why haven't I been learning about it? Because what was happening for me is when I was in ceremony, I would have these moments of clarity. I didn't feel like I needed to get dinner on the table. All of a sudden, I felt whole in like unto myself, and I felt super clear, and I knew who I was, and I could feel the love between me and my husband. I could feel the love between me and my son. I felt flexibility and freedom to be who I was instead of stuck in my role. And so I'm just really curious, like, how is it that I can just spend 2 hours in this ceremony and feel completely different? Why isn't more people doing this? And why am I afraid to tell everybody that I'm doing this? So I start doing all this historical research, and I start going into the presence of the sacred feminine history, and where was it part of our culture, and where did we lose it? And what I realized was, over the course of like they predict that humans have been in existence for around 30,000 years. So imagine like a timeline, 30,000 years. The sacred feminine was the primary spiritual practice in different ways all over the world for like this much of time. Like I barely moved my hand if you can't see me, right? Like 96% of human existence, the sacred feminine was it. And it's just been the past 1,500 years that we've had this very successful campaign to erase the sacred feminine. And it was done in a very violent way. So once I started reading about the history of this, all of the sudden, my behavior started to change. And I started asking myself, why is it that reading history books about the sacred feminine is the thing that's changing my behavior, and not the hundreds of personal development books I have on my bookshelf? And for me, and I'm a psychology major, so I started going into Jungian psychology and the work of Marion Woodman, and understanding how story and metaphor are actually the language of the soul and change our psychology. So what was happening in real time was I was reprogramming my brain through metaphor and ceremony that humans evolved in a relationship with over the past 30,000 years, which meant that I had access to my unique power, my soul, my truth, and my clarity, which meant that I felt myself separate from all of the roles that our oppressive patriarchal society unconsciously infected me with.
No big deal.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I just get so excited about this shit.
No, I mean, and rightfully so, because I think that what's really beautiful about what you just shared is it gets to the root of things, right? And I think a lot of the other stuff that you and I had done for years, you can slap an affirmation on top of something, you can think like a positive thought, whatever, but it's not getting at the root. And to be honest, that's like so much of the work that, whether I'm doing it with the nervous system or even a lot of the work I've been listening to with Eckhart Tolle, like it's getting at the root of things so that I can actually reprogram how I'm showing up in life. And I think that is really exciting. And it is something to be truly passionate about. One of the things that comes up for me around roles, and something I've been thinking about and even talking to my community about a lot, is the role of being sick. And so I know you have,
Juicy.
I know. Great.
Yes.
I know you don't have specific, experience with necessarily a chronic illness, but I do want us to talk about, I know that my body has symptoms that are characterized as disease, and those are very real. And you've witnessed the ups and downs of all of that in a very real way for me. But then I'm also learning and really deepening in, oh, but there's this like coat that I put on that is like, oh, I'm also a sick person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have really been dismantling that, especially through this nervous system work the last couple of years, which has been life changing. So it made me want to ask you, because of that, I was like, oh, this is a role that makes me actually very small, but it's very comfortable.
Yeah.
I have really gotten a lot of value out of being somebody who needs to be taken care of and is incapable in so many ways, which is not true at all, but that's the coat that I wore, right? So I wanted to know, has there ever been a role that you've played that you're like, oh, this is like, okay, I know I'm not supposed to be wearing this, but like it's kind of comfy and I feel kind of, just comfortable in it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was my whole journey with weight and carrying around extra weight. And, I probably actually did. I mean, it didn't present as a chronic illness, but I was sort of chronically sick, a little bit sick all the time, massive fatigue, mold poisoning, suffered from parasites. I was always tired. I always needed to sleep in the afternoon. I always felt down, so for probably like the first 7 years of motherhood, and even before then, I think this has been going on, since I was probably 10 years old. I've worn this coat of weight on my body that, of course, has impacted my health. So here's the way that I looked at it. And I also referenced it as a coat. So I love that you brought that up. So I started asking myself, if I took this coat off, what would I be afraid of happening? And instantly, the visions and the feelings I got were, I would have to do everything and be everything for everyone. That everyone would need me and I would just have to say yes. And then I asked myself, is that already happening? And it was. It was already happening. But I was having this experience, or I had this belief that my weight and my lethargy and my exhaustion gave me permission to say no. And this is part of the role of just being a woman, that women are actually only here to help other people. We're not here to help ourselves. We're only here to be the stage crew for everybody else. We are not here to be the star of the show of our own life. And our worth is completely based off of how easy and comfortable we're making everybody else's lives. And if the idea of me saying no to people, of making them uncomfortable, of putting my priorities before theirs, made me feel like I was going to die. So it just felt easier to be like, oh, maybe if I look like I'm sick, if I am, if I have on more weight than like I know is healthy for my body. There's no like, everybody's body is different, dear Lord. And then maybe I'll have permission to say no. So I had to do a lot of work in my internalized patriarchy on that front and really program that I could be well and alive and full of energy and say no a lot. And then I realized that the practice was in the moment. The only way I was actually going to get better was I had to create those energetic and verbal and lifestyle boundaries first so that my physical boundary could heal.
Wow. I love that so much, Sarah. I'm so happy and so proud of you too, because I've definitely seen that process and just so many things that you've had to, go through to get there. And I know it's a constant evolving journey, but I've really seen you take that coat off
Thank you.
in it's such a beautiful way. And the thing that comes up for me when you share that is, and I know we've talked about this a lot too, is when I was going back and forth about my decision to not have children.
Yeah.
And I kept being like, oh, I can't because of my medication that I was on, which like technically was true. But then like I got off the medication and I still was saying that because I just felt bad being like, no, this isn't my path. Like, this isn't what I'm choosing for myself. And I felt like that was so awful or so bad to do that. And yeah, it took me like a decade to be like, no, this is actually just what I want for myself, and thank God you have so many children. So it's like I don't have to have my own. I can just love your children and my friends' children, and it's great. But yeah, that was such a journey for me because I felt so guilty.
Totally. Because again, it's part of our role as women is to be a mother. And it's just so interesting how we've all been programmed to be the same and want the same things. And if we are programmed that way, then we don't look for all the ways that we're different and unique. And it's like underneath the lid of how am I different is like literally our greatest talent. It's just like this little treasure box. And it's like the patriarchy is like, oh, if you just all pretend that you're meant to be the same role of like perfect mom, perfect wife, they're not going to be like, but wait, where am I? Where's my thing? And if we rummage through the closet of all of the rules and roles that have been put on us, all of a sudden we're like, oh, here's the box. That is me. And it's like, we look at it and all of the sudden life just becomes so incredible and so wild and so unique and this amazing magical path. And that is the way.
Yeah, I love that. And I really hope people, whether they're mothers or not, or wives or not, or whoever is listening, those particular roles are not what matters. It's whatever roles you're playing in your life, right? It's not like this work is only for moms and wives.
Oh my God, no. Yeah. I mean, definitely not. It's about like my work is really about the journey from thinking I need to be one way to what is my way? Who am I? And that needs to happen regardless of whether we have kids or whether we are married. Because we are all meant to be so incredibly uniquely different. And that journey of discovering who you actually are and why you're here is the most incredible journey of your lifetime.
Yeah. I love that. I could talk to you for hours, but yes. I know I'll call you later. Something, offline. But I do always want to end our conversations on the podcast just asking, what does thriving look like to you?
Thriving to me looks like asking myself every day, who am I today? And constantly giving myself permission to be different.
Amen. I love that. I love that
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, having that grace that we are different every day. And sometimes every moment in the day. Like I can wake up feeling really sad, and then like by the evening I'm like so happy and so excited about something. And yeah, just like having that grace I think is so vital. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah. I can't wait
for having me, Nitika,
to be shared. And yeah, I'm just so excited for us to continue the work side by side. And I love you so much.
I love you. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.